Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Saturday, June 8th, and today is day 248. Significant news in the last 24 hours. 4 hostages from central Gaza have been rescued. Israel says that it freed these 4 hostages from central Gaza in the largest rescue operation since the beginning of what they called the war against Hamas on October 7th. These 4 hostages are in good medical condition. Authorities say they've received medical checks. They are in an Israeli hospital where they'll spend the night. According to the Washington Post, there's a list of hostages that have been released. The number of those freed is 116. Israel and Hamas initially agreed to a 4-day deal back in the fall, which began on November 24th. And so there's now a tally of the total hostages. 78 Israeli and dual national hostages were released in that initial exchange deal on November 24th. It's believed there were initially 240 Palestinian prisoners were released in that initial exchange. And then there were numerous dual nationals, so Israeli Russian nationals, 24 foreign nationals were released. Before the deal, at least 5 hostages were freed. So the number of hostages it's believed that are remaining in Gaza is 75. According to the Israeli government, they believe that 251 people were taken on October 7th. And so they believe that 41 of the 116 hostages who are still held in Gaza, 41 are confirmed dead. So there's an estimated 75 hostages that are believed to still be alive in Gaza today. Jake Sullivan of the National Security Council had a statement from the White House saying that the U.S. is supporting all efforts to secure the release of remaining hostages, that they are supporting all efforts to release hostages still held by Hamas, including American citizens. This includes through ongoing negotiations and other means. So there's quite a bit of conversation about what role the U.S. is playing. There have been some reports on X and social media that the U.S. has supported the Israeli military, not only in coordination, but what role the U.S. bridge is playing, that whole Pier, that the Pier could have been involved in the rescue operations. And so there's a question about that. There have been indications that perhaps the Israeli Defense Forces hid in humanitarian vehicles as a part of the rescue operations. And so there's a conversation on the ground about what the rescue operation looked like. The Washington Post also put out an urgent alert because at the same time these 4 hostages were rescued, there were multiple operations happening that killed dozens and dozens of people. So the Washington Post said at least 210 people in central Gaza were killed at the same time that these 4 hostages were rescued. According to hospital officials at Al-Aqsa, in Deir Balah, they said 94 bodies had been counted there at Al-Wada Hospital. Their administrative director said 116 people were killed. It's not immediately clear whether or not those deaths were related to the hostage rescue. Joseph Borrell, the EU top diplomat, said the deaths in Gaza today were reports of another massacre of civilians. They are appalling. We condemn this in the strongest terms. The bloodbath must end immediately. Netanyahu said that the rescue operation in terms of the hostages was heroic and will go down in Israeli history. He spoke to all the returned hostages this afternoon and reiterated his commitment to bring all the hostages home. Responding to the news of the Israeli operation, Hamas political chief Ismail Haniyeh said that Israel cannot force its choices on Hamas and that Hamas will not accept a deal that does not achieve security for Palestinians. And the Wall Street Journal reported that Qatar and Egypt told Hamas leaders that if they don't agree to the ceasefire deal that's on the table, they might face expulsion from Doha, potential arrest, the freezing of their assets and sanctions. The report added that, according to officials familiar with the ceasefire talks, the warnings were made following a demand from the Biden administration that they did not achieve the expected results. According to the health ministry in Gaza, the death toll there now is 36,801 Palestinians killed, and those wounded is 83,680. From an international NGO on the ground, they shared this news from a colleague in Gaza this morning. The bombing did not stop all night long. It was a very intense night in Deir al-Balah. Actually, it was very intense these past couple of days. Airstrikes and artillery did not stop striking. I barely had a couple of hours of sleep. Today's morning, people started to dismantle tents and to move from the east to the west. I saw these same people a few weeks ago building their tents on agricultural lands after having been displaced before, and they came after the Rafah invasion. The point is all eyes on Rafah, but in the middle area in Deir al-Balah, which is considered a humanitarian zone, it has been hit very intensely. The health ministry in Gaza said that the medical staff at Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah are struggling to treat the large number of wounded there after the attacks and that happened middle of the day today. And the Israeli army said that its forces on Thursday killed one of the heads of Hamas's security apparatus near Rafah. The Israeli army said that it's begun to increase security surrounding the temporary floating pier that the U.S. deployed, which, by the way, just became operational in the last day or so. And the White House said that it is awaiting an official response from Hamas on the latest ceasefire proposal. In Israel, there were demonstrations today for the release of hostages, even after the announcement of the rescue of the four. Anti-government protests calling for early elections have continued throughout Israel. And German and Israeli activists rallied yesterday at the German embassy in Tel Aviv, urging Germany to stop supplying arms to Israel and to push for a ceasefire. Police detained 4 people for disturbing public safety and arresting one for assaulting an officer. Protesters were later ordered to be released from the Tel Aviv Magistrates Court. The War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz was supposed to have a press conference this afternoon where he was expected to announce his resignation, but that was postponed because of the rescue of the 4 hostages. And it was announced in Lebanon that in the southern village of Atarun, because of a drone attack, 2 people were killed in South Lebanon today. Yesterday, Israel was put on the list of nations by the United Nations on a global list of states and armed groups who have committed violations against children. And the UN envoy from Israel, Gilad Erdan, said that he was shocked and disgusted by this shameful decision for Israel to be included on this list. But with more than 13,000 children killed in Gaza, and after the bombing of a UN school in central Gaza that killed more than 40 Palestinians, some of them children, Israel has been placed on this list. According to human rights officials, Hamas is also named in the report for its killing and kidnapping of children on October 7th, in which nearly 1,200 Israelis were killed. The report covers killing, maiming, sexual abuse, abduction, the recruitment of children, denial of aid access, the targeting of schools and hospitals. And today at the White House, thousands of pro-Palestinian demonstrators gathered outside this Saturday to protest Joe Biden's response to Israel's ongoing military strikes on Gaza. Footage posted on social media showed police using pepper spray on protesters who faced arrest. After mass demonstrations, at least one demonstrator held a canister that released green and white smoke on the southern side of the White House. And one person was dressed as Spider-Man and shouted, "Biden, Biden, we can't wait. We'll see you at The Hague," making reference to the International Criminal Court that prosecutes war crimes. I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of Occam's razor, the principle in philosophy that explains sometimes that the simplest solution is often the one that makes the most sense. If you have the fewest assumptions, the one that's the simplest is the one that is often correct. And I don't want to oversimplify this situation, but it feels like in this moment, it's right for us to celebrate life, to celebrate the life of the hostages that have been saved and rescued, to celebrate with those 4 who've been returned home to their loved ones. That is good news. Life is good. Life for anyone who makes it through the night in Gaza. Gaza that has become a place that's known literally as a graveyard for children, a place where dozens of people are being killed every single day, now for more than 8 months. Friends, How is it not a genocide when the death toll over the last 248 days averages more than 140 people a day? But those injured is more than 300 people a day. Regardless of what you call it, it is wrong, and it's atrocity against humanity and an atrocity against God. And the killing and the death must stop. It must be brought to an end. And the United States must stop sending weapons that are being used to kill people, civilians, and especially thousands of children. So continue to stand in the gap, give, act, and pray to bring an end to the war on Gaza, to bring an end to the death and destruction and the end of life. So do what you can. Continue to work towards peace. In the name of Christ. Amen.